The one thing that was kind of drilled into me from the very, very outset is the measurement of what you do is not how they leave the salon. The measurement of what you do is what does she look like when she gets out of the shower.
Welcome to the Hairpreneur Show, the show that teaches you, the hair pro, how to work smarter so you can make more, work less, and live a purpose-driven life on your schedule, not your clients'. I'm your host, Ryan Whedon, and each week I'll teach you awesome, actionable ways to tap into your personal greatness. Through marketing, mindset, and confidence training, it's time to unlock the next level of you. Let's grow. Hey everybody, Ryan Whedon here, back with the Hairpreneur Show. Today I've got an awesome guest. He is a true icon in our industry. Let me introduce you to Stephen Moody. He is just such an incredible person, such a remarkable industry inspiration, and currently is the North American Education Director of Wella. It's probably where you've seen him. If you haven't seen him in books, videos, everywhere else. He has also been previously the Global Education Director of Vidal Sassoon Education, which was at the Academy in Santa Monica. Also, Cut Craft, which is Wella's virtual online cutting course with certification. I'm pretty sure that's what you do. That's where people can find you and learn from your mastery, as well as get a pair of shears that you've designed with Mitsutani, which is just an awesome shear company. I have a pair, but now I got to get the Stephen Moody pair. Welcome to the Hairpreneur Show, Stephen.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. To be honest with you, I don't know how I'm going to live up to that. I'm really honored to be on your podcast. You've had some amazing people on here. And listen, you're the master of balayage and you're the master of hair within your own rights. I'm just really pleased to be sharing this and to be joining you. So a big thank you, and thank you to everybody for listening.
You got it. You got it. This is very exciting to have you on here. You have been in the industry for such a long time and have always been putting your best self forward to help grow the industry and help support hairdressers. And I know that is what you are all about. There's no better time for leaders like you to be stepping up, which I know you do all the time, especially after this just unpredictable, incredible year that we've been challenged by. And here you are, always happy, always smiling, always really just doing whatever you can to give back. So I want to thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I just think in these stressful times, Ryan, I think that's really the approach that all of us have got to take. You know, it is what it is, and none of us planned for this. None of us expected it. Certainly none of us deserved it. But it is what it is. There's one thing about hairdressers that I'm absolutely certain of, probably more than any other profession, and that is that we can deal with change. You know, that's what we do. We kind of work with customers and we offer up change and we deal with change and we, navigate change. And coming out of this, I think a year from now, 2 years from now, we're going to look back on this and think, wow, that was a great learning experience for all of us, myself included, Ryan.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's like 2020, it's going to be such a year that we always remember. We'll never forget. I think before this, it was 9/11. Now this is like the next year in my life anyway, that I've just been, you've based some of your stories around, you based some of your life changes around. And I know 2020 is going to be another one of those.
For sure.
So you've been in the industry for 40 years, right? You've seen a lot. You've seen everything from classic education with zero social media, zero ways online on the internet to building a clientele to, oh my gosh, a whole new world. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen over the years and how have you adapted?
That's a great question. And yeah, on November the 11th, 1987, I set foot in a salon in London called Vidal Sassoon. And I started my apprenticeship on November the 11th, 1987. So I guess this year is 40 years of being in the craft. And yeah, I'm just really blessed because in many ways, I'm just really fortunate that I've been in hair in the decades that I've been in, because I've really been so fortunate in the sense that, the 80s, certainly as a hair cutter and a colorist, as opposed to a hairdresser, was such an amazing, amazing decade. And the capital of the world for hair in the 80s was London. And I just happened to be there. That's kind of where I started my craft. And, at that time, there was just a tremendous amount of social unrest and angst and political turmoil. And, all of that kind of resulted in a kickback by young people. And really what fermented from that social unrest and that political unrest and economic unrest too. I mean, we think we've got it difficult now. I remember leaving high school, and I think unemployment when I left high school was something like 15%. 24% of the people who were unemployed were under the age of 30. Now, those people didn't have a job because they were stupid or they were lazy. They didn't have a job because there was no jobs. So, a lot of young people, Ryan, they kind of fended for themselves, and they couldn't afford Gucci and Yohji Yamamoto and Comme des Garçons, so they made their own clothes. They couldn't afford to go to the hairdressers, so they cut their own hair and they colored it with food color. And, they took a pair of jeans and they ripped jeans and they put safety pins through it and they made their own music. An answer to the social unrest was something called punk. And punk wasn't a fashion at all, not at all. It was people like me that made it into a fashion. So, clothing designers and, amazing people like Malcolm McLaren, for example, Google Malcolm McLaren, he harnessed the Sex Pistols, for example. And all of a sudden we had a commercially viable sound that was called punk, a commercially viable fashion in clothing that was called punk, and a commercially viable hair that was kind of very heavily influenced by punk. So again, coming back to what we do for a living, it was a great time to cut hair. It was a great time to color hair. And, that kind of grew arms and legs and went sideways, etc. But it was just really cool to be around in London in the 80s. And then in the late 80s, I came to the US, and that was like virgin territory because, people were really styling hair. And, the color they were doing wasn't particularly exciting. And, I was just in the right place at the right time, I guess, doing the right thing. And, my obsession for working with hairdressers, my obsession for education really kind of embellished on all of that. And it was really fun. It was really light. And it was just super, super exciting to be in hair, really, because you've got guitars hanging on the back of your wall. In many ways, hairdressers were rock stars. They really were. And, they got invited to all the best parties and the best openings and, got front seats. And it was just an amazing, amazing time to be in hair. And, above and beyond everything else, we made a shitload of money. So it wasn't just the creative side of it and the cool factor and the it factor. It was a very prosperous time for hair, which, I've been looking in the Stephen Moody crystal ball just recently, and I just see that coming back around. I see that on the horizon. I really do.
Like the whole punk, the whole people taking more risk with their looks. And I see it too. When I look at my Instagram feed, I see bold colors coming back. I see bold cuts coming back and people wanting to take more chances with their clothes. I feel like that is one thing that a society and as humans, we have control over our appearance. We can make a quick life change with our hair, with our clothes, with our, if we work out more, we can change our bodies where we don't have a lot of control in the rest of the world. And right now, that is one thing that we can hold on to.
Ryan, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think moving forward in 2021 and onwards, people are going to want to really be able to control and manipulate what they can control and manipulate. And this year, 2020, there's been a lot that we haven't been able to do that. It's been out of our control. And, coming back to hair, I left school when I was 16. I don't have any qualifications. I didn't go to university. My thing is hair and fashion. And you don't have to go to university to study fashion and realize a hemline on a dress, it can only go so short. It can't go any shorter. So that hemline has to start to come down. It can only go down to the ankles. It can't go any longer than the ankles. So then it has to start to come back up. And when you look at the last sort of 10 years of where we've been with hair, it's insanely long. It can't get any longer. It can't get any flatter. So, a lot of people think that, hair and fashion and everything all starts on a catwalk in Milan or a runway in Rome or Paris or whatever. The furthest is from the truth, Certainly hair fashion starts, on the streets with young people who look at the big sister and think, I don't want to look like my big sister. She's boring. So the opposite to elbow-length center partings and subdued colors, pretty but subdued colors, the opposite to that is shoulder length and above. It's volume, it's texture, it's bolder colors. And that's what I'm seeing when I go on my travels is a lot of young people are kind of rebelling. And it's not Stephen Moody or Ryan that leads. It's these young people who do their own hair, for example, and they make their own clothes and they make their own music. And that journey that I talked about earlier with the Sex Pistols and with punk, and I just see that coming around. I don't know the hair's going to look like that. I don't know people are going to have safety pins in their jeans. I'm not talking about that. But what I'm talking about is, to your point earlier, Ryan, I really think people will want to push the boat out. And I think they're going to start to feel comfortable in their own skins.
Right. And then the fashion directors and the fashion designers are going to look at this trend and then they're going to personalize it and then make it runway spectacular.
Absolutely. And Ryan Whedon's going to do that. Ryan Whedon's going to look at this and think, right, that hair color there is ridiculous. It doesn't look very classy. We can't make a lot of money from it. And Ryan Whedon's going to put a spin on that hair color. And all of a sudden, we've got a new fashion or a new trend. We've got dollars. We've got people going into a hair salon. That's what you and I do for a living.
Right. Find a way to package it, put a bow on it, and then mass produce it.
An educational program around it and share, how do you do that? How do you replicate it? How do you put a price tag on that? What color products do we use to execute that, for example? And that's what I'm always looking to do. I'm always looking to sort of see things. And, sometimes I look at something and I close one eye and I squint through the other eye and I see things, And to me, that's really fun. Someone the other day in an interview, they said to me, where do you get your inspiration, Stephen? And I said, I have to say hairdressers. Because when I'm working with hairdressers and teaching hairdressers, some people execute things really well and other people maybe not so well. But sometimes those people that don't execute it too well, I stand on one leg and I close one eye and I squint my other eye. And sometimes I see things and I think,
It makes me think too. It's like some people that are so worried about making their work look like everybody else's are shortchanging themselves because yes, I think it is important to see what other people are doing, but then focus on yourself, focus on how you personalize your own looks for your clients, because that's what's going to set you apart. And that's also what's going to move the industry in a bunch of different directions.
I got my final interview on, I think it's the 22nd, it's next week. And one of the pre-loaded questions for this interview that I'm doing is who do you want to be? And my answer to it was, I want to be the best version I can be of me, because I've tried to be versions of other people and I failed terribly. And I think that's an approach that I've always had with what I do and my work and everything. And some people don't like what I do. Some people don't like the way I teach. Some people don't like the way I do hair, and that's fine. Not a problem. I do want to be a better version of me. as opposed to copying other people.
Sure. Now, how do you work on that? How do you work on yourself to become the best version of you? It's something that I always strive to do as well. But you and I were talking before we started about how hairdressers really need to start learning about their own confidence and really tapping into their full potential so they can really affect their lives and the lives of other people. What is some good advice, some good habits, something that we can tell other hairdressers, okay, you know what? This is how you're going to start to become the best version of you on a regular basis.
I heard a song one time and it had a line in the song and it said, do something every day that scares you. And I try to do things that scare me. I mean, not literally, like jumping off the edge of a cliff or something.
Yeah.
I do like to do things difficult way around or approach something standing on a box that I've never stood on that box before. Or like I mentioned earlier, closing one eye and squinting through the other eye and seeing if I can see this from a different angle. And it might be seeing it from another person's perspective, with whoever I'm teaching or whatever. I do like to, I guess it's a bit like going to the gym, Before this mess, I used to try to go to the gym 4 and 5 times a week and swim and do all that kind of stuff. And I sometimes think it's quite easy going and working out to keep visiting the same machines. Or when you're in the pool, swimming the same stroke. And I just think it's cool to sometimes visit a machine or do an exercise or swim a stroke that you're not totally comfortable with. And it pushes you and it questions your body.
Mm-hmm. That's
what I try to do with a pair of scissors. And that's what I try to do with, with education. I mean, since lockdown, Ryan, I can honestly put my hand on my heart and say that I've learned more in the last 9 months than I've learned in the last 10 years by a country mile.
Mm-hmm. Is that because there's been more time to study, more time to learn?
That, and the fact that I'm a very physical educator. I'm a person that when I'm teaching people, I move them, I push them, I pull them, I touch them. And it's the same when I'm doing hair. I'm a very hands-on physical person doing hair. People can feel me when I'm doing their hair. And obviously you can't do that virtually.
Right.
So the learning process for me, the big learning process is how do I do that? By inspiring people either with a PowerPoint or with me doing a haircut on this side and them watching in wherever they are. Or more importantly, more frequently, a lot of what I've been doing is virtual, one-to-one, hands-on. So it's me walking someone through doing a model, but they're in Cape Town, South Africa.
Wow.
And there's a lot of what we do as educators that is physical, particularly cutting hair. I often think coloring hair is much more two-dimensional. It's quite flat. Now, there's the added complication of level and tone and underlying pigment and all that business. The physical act of cutting hair is very, very three-dimensional. But obviously, when you're teaching virtually, you're teaching on a two-dimensional platform, a two-dimensional surface. So I just learned a tremendous amount with that. And I was actually on a call this morning with 2 colleagues, one in Canada and one in Chicago. We've really put together this amazing, it's called Virtual Cutcraft. It's the cutting program that I launched about 7 years ago. But the program was launched for a Wella studio in Germany or New York or Sao Paulo. And obviously I can't get to Sao Paulo. I can't get to Germany. So we've kind of rejiggered the whole information to where now it's Cutcraft virtual. And there's just a lot of things that you can't sort of say. You can't make people on. I'll give you an example of something that we were really racking our brains with. As you know, when you're cutting hair, there's different things that you do, different actions that you do to control the hair. A lot of people think cutting hair is all about the scissors. And the scissors is a tiny, tiny, tiny part. All scissors do is open and close. And if there's hair inside, it'll cut the hair off. But a broken bottle or a razor or a 10-inch pair of scissors or a 4-inch pair, they're all pretty much the same. They all cut their hair off to one degree or other. What's way more important when you're cutting hair is what you do 3 seconds before you cut the hair. And if you're right-handed, the key thing is your left hand. If you're left-handed, reverse what I've just said. So let me repeat that. Your clever hand, if you're right-handed, is your left hand. Your dumb hand is your right hand, because your right hand holds the scissors, and all the scissors do is open and close, and they just cut hair off. But your left hand does all of the intelligent work. And one of the things that we teach that's very difficult to teach face-to-face is tension. How much you pinch the hair, how much you pull the hair, how hard you comb the hair. Well, teaching tension is like teaching electricity. You know electricity is there, you can't see it, you know? And tension's the same. When I'm teaching someone tension, I can't see electricity. So then compound that with teaching virtually. You know, how do you get that message across? So we made a whole bunch of videos. I got like some Play-Doh, got some balls of Play-Doh, and I made a video of picking up a piece of Play-Doh, a ball of Play-Doh with my fingers, and showing that I hadn't made an indentation in the Play-Doh. And then I picked it up again and pinched the Play-Doh. So it's like showing ways of communicating without physically being face-to-face. And I've just learned a tremendous amount, a huge amount.
That's incredible. And just something like that, like as simple as tension, it's definitely not simple, but it's going to be tricky for somebody to teach virtually because everybody's going to also have different sized fingers. I remember when I was studying Tony and Guy, and I actually worked for Tony and Guy for a couple of years. And I went through one of their training programs. And of course, some of their training programs, kind of like Vidal Sassoon, you know, or it's like 5 days in a row. You're just cutting. Your fingers are just sore from all these new hand positions and everything. But like I always had like really skinny fingers. So I couldn't hold this giant section of hair evenly because I'd have this gap in between my first 2 knuckles.
You and me both. I think we've got similar hands. I've got huge knuckles and then kind of really skinny, narrow fingers in between the knuckles. Yeah, absolutely.
That kind of causes a problem, right? Because to get that even tension.
It does.
How do I fatten my fingers up a little bit more to get that even tension?
Yeah.
So you used to travel all the time pre-pandemic. I mean, you were always on a plane going to some other country. And I'm sure that, as you said, that's a big part of your life, the traveling, the moving around, the teaching people from all over the world. Do you feel like there's a piece of you missing from all that?
Yeah. I mean, since I was sort of 20, you know, working at Sassoon, I would travel. And, you know, not everybody could come to London to take a 5-day course, for example. So, you know, we would go to Tokyo or we'd go to Moscow or we'd go wherever. And that was really kind of normal for me. And that was my sort of rhythm. And, you know, up until February of this year, you know, I'd been to New Zealand. I'd been to, just this year, I'd been to Costa Rica, I'd been to Toronto, and I'd been to Boston in, 4 weeks.
Wow. And
then the rest of the year, my calendar was just slammed with, you know, Spain and goodness knows where else, everywhere, Turkey and Thailand, all over the place. And that's something that's been part of what I've done, like, you know, many other people in my trade. You know, not everybody can come to you, so you go to them. And it's something that I've very, very much enjoyed, and it's been part of my job. And then with COVID, that literally went from 100 miles an hour to 0, you know, overnight. And it was very odd. It was really odd. It was odd for my wife. It was odd for my 3 kids. It was odd for me because they've never seen me. I mean, I'm like a sailor.
Yeah, right.
You know, like gone for a while and then he's gone again.
Oh, you're still here.
Still here, yeah. When are you going next?
Yeah.
So, yeah, difficult. I mean, you know, I have to say that, you know, despite all the successes that we've had with virtual education, Ryan, and, you know, you've delivered a lot of it yourself, I do really, really miss hairdressers. At age 13, I kind of mapped out my career, Ryan. And I decided at age 13 that I wanted a customer called Joe Hairdresser. I was born and raised in a salon. I worked in my family's salon. I worked in Sassoon salons. But my long-term goal was to have the hairdresser be my customer. And I really miss them. I really, really miss them.
It's a great industry that we're in, and it's hard to watch so many struggling hairdressers right now. And even when I've done some research in the past, it's not really a secret that a lot of hairdressers are paycheck to paycheck and they are struggling right now. What kind of motivation or inspiring thoughts can we give them to stay strong, to stay positive until things get back to some kind of normalcy?
That's a really, really good question. And it's kind of easy for me sitting here to throw things out because I'm not unemployed. I'm not being told by the state or the city or the county that I can't earn a living. So please, what I'm about to say, take it with a pinch of salt because I'm not on the receiving end. But I encourage people to, number one, to look at everything from a positive standpoint. I'm seeing a lot of people the last 7-8 months, and some people racking up Netflix, and then other people are racking up Hairbrained, or they're racking up a class with me, or they're racking up a class on wellaed.com or whatever. So they're really vacuuming up information, they're vacuuming up education, so that when they do get back to where they need to be, the little feet are hitting the ground running. And that might be taking a class on, how to edit video, for example. How to edit 15-second pieces for Instagram or whatever that's going to really grow your business. It might be business education. So that will be number one, is to really kind of, do something that scares you. That's kind of healthy.
Right. A lot of us do find comfort in learning new techniques, but maybe not so much like, the world is changing and I need to adapt to it. I'm scared to adapt, but I need to start taking those steps in that direction. And one of those, like you're saying, might be, now is a good time to start working on my Instagram strategy.
Yeah.
Start coming up with a plan, start learning how to edit video and take better photos so that when I do have clients again, boom, I'm already a leg up.
Yeah. And coming back to what we were saying before, my crystal ball is not 100% accurate, but again, we've been in such an area of long hair, long elbow length hair. And I know a lot of hairdressers who, after 2-3 years, they've quit because it's hard on their bodies, welding that hair all day long, and they don't want to be blow dry monkeys. They want to still have a career when they're 40 and 50 years old and not be in a wheelchair. They want to have an element of creativity alongside their earning potential as well. And we mentioned earlier that, the opposite to elbow length hair is hair that's above elbow length. The opposite to, pretty commercial color, which will never go away. But, adding in that the color that you mentioned earlier, the fun colors and the vibrant colors and whatever, I really think that's coming around. And the other thing that I think is coming around too is, we've been crucifying texture for such a long time, either chemically or electronically killing texture. And I think, as you well know, coloring hair to be straight or coloring hair to be curly is like chalk and cheese. Styling hair to be straight or styling hair to be curly is like chalk and cheese. And certainly cutting hair straight or cutting hair to be curly, again, is chalk and cheese. So, again, we don't have to go to university to realize maybe what's coming down the road is texture, is volume, is hair that's beautifully colored, that's maybe got curl to it. And that curl might be from a product. That curl might be from color. That curl might be from a haircut. That curl might be from electricity. That curl might be from a perm. I don't know. Or it might be from all of the above. But again, I would invite people over this period to sort of Do things that scare you. Look at the class that maybe is focusing on texture, on curly hair. And maybe you're not familiar with that. Maybe you are. I don't know. But take a look at that, because I think that is something that's cool. It's different. It's coming down the road. And I think one of the key things is whenever it arrives, whatever it is, we want to be ready. We want to be on the front side of the curve. We want to be surfing on the front of the wave, not on the back of the wave. We want to be paddling before that wave hits. So when the wave comes, we've already got momentum.
Right. It's all about the momentum. That's why you got to start now.
Yeah.
To make sure that you are ready. You're already going. You're already at 100 miles an hour. So that way you can have that exponential growth. Yeah. But you were saying about textured hair. I think a lot of hairdressers are afraid of textured hair. All different types of everything from kinky curly to even styling curly hair, wavy hair. That's why it's just so much easier. Let's just hit it with a flat iron and straighten it out. And, because it's something that we are comfortable with. It's in our comfort zone. But when we see that image on, say, it's splashed on either our page or American Salon or these big media publications where it's this incredibly colored and styled curly hair, we're looking at it, it's show-stopping.
Yeah.
We need to be looking for that show-stopping change to focus on it in our uncomfort.
And there's something that's interesting that's happened. I've got a lot of friends that are African-American. I've got a lot of friends that have naturally curly hair. I've got a lot of friends who are business people who are told in the workplace that to be businesslike or to be beautiful, they have to have straight hair. And as well as I do, Ryan, that a young girl who's psychologically at 3-4 years old, she's told by society that she's not beautiful because she's got curly hair. Advertisements that she's looked at, they're all people with straight hair. Mm-hmm. She's not necessarily told that curly hair is not beautiful. It's kind of there, Mm-hmm. And that woman's like 24 now, for example. And for the last 20 years, she's been electronically and chemically straightening her hair. And, she comes to Stephen and she says, I want my hair cut in. And we start heading into a conversation with her hair. And she said, well, my curls are ugly. They are ugly. And they're ugly because she's beaten the living daylights out of those curls for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And they're tired. They're exhausted, dehydrated. The beat. Now, the last 5, 6, 7 months, she's not been on a date. She's not been to the office. She's not been in restaurants. She's not been out and about. And something amazing has grown out the top of her head, Ryan. Out of those roots has grown 5, 6, 7 months of virgin texture, virgin curls. And when I say virgin, I don't mean not. What I mean is she's not beat the curls. And all of a sudden, there's something coming out of her head that's gorgeous. Mm-hmm. And it is a nice curl. It is a pretty curl. It's a feminine texture, for example. And as hairdressers, we've got an opportunity to seize the moment with that woman and maybe give her color, a haircut, products, styling tips, that are based around celebrating who she is rather than that woman trying to be someone who she's not.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think that's an opportunity.
It's all about helping them tap into their inner beauty as well, because if they can feel more comfortable and more confident in who they are without having to completely manipulate themselves to try to be that person in the magazine every time.
Absolutely.
There's that finding that freedom in being ourselves. Like you're finding and I'm finding, and it's just that it's a freeing feeling. We want to be able to give that to other people.
I mentioned earlier doing something that frightens you. Mm-hmm. Probably about 9 months ago, I did something that really frightened me, Ryan. And I did it for the first time. Contemplated entering Naha.
Okay.
And I've never done it. Never entered Naha. And I don't know why I've never done it. I won't get into that. But
But it scared you.
It did. It did. And it scared me because I thought, oh my goodness, what if people don't like what I enter? And then I started researching, well, people that have won, what have they won with? And then I thought to myself, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what people have won with. And I don't care if people don't like what I'm going to enter with. And I don't care if I don't win. But what I do care about is putting something forward that's a statement. And in this particular instance, it's a statement about textured hair.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm entering cutting with African American hair. And I'm not entering hairstyles. I'm entering haircuts. And I really feel passionate about entering with something that's not had her neck stretched and her cheekbones are not alien like popping out of her face, and the haircut's cut with a mouse, and the hairline is absolutely perfect. That's not what I'm entering with. And the reason I'm not entering with that is I think that curly hair can be cut as opposed to styled, beaten to death, blow-dried straight. I think hairlines are feminine. And I think something that's irregular and something that's not perfect is pretty. And probably more importantly of all, I also wanted to enter something that's fun and got a strong statement, but at the same time, maybe that's going to inspire another person to do curly hair and to cut it and not beat it to death. And if that then can inspire that person, then my entry into NAHA has been worthwhile, Ryan.
So have you already done that? Have you already submitted it?
Yeah.
Amazing. And when is that going to happen? Is that in January?
I want to say it's oh my goodness, when is it?
Because it was matched up with the ISSE show, right? Am I correct about that?
I think you're right, Ryan. January is my goodness, January is when they're announcing the finalists.
Okay.
And then March is the actual final, and it's aligned with ISSE, with the Long Beach trade show. And goodness only knows whether it will be a face-to-face or virtual or whatever. But that's the sort of the plan. So yeah, I did that. And again, just coming back to this thing of, doing something that scares you, I could have picked looks perhaps that were more akin to what's won in the past. And I didn't want to do that, Ryan. I didn't want to sell out. And I just think that particularly coming out of COVID, I think with competitions, I think we need to celebrate things in competitions that can connect back to Mrs. Smith. And Mrs. Smith going in a salon and looking, seeing something on Instagram or in the front window and going, wow, I really love that color. Or I really love that haircut. I love both, or that style or whatever. And I'd like that, please. I think that should be a big part of why are we doing these competitions. And, I joined Weller 8.5 years ago. And one of the projects, one of the assignments that I had was to look at Weller International Trend Vision. And, went down the same route with ITVA along the lines of let's make and celebrate these winners, but ultimately let's have this come back to business. And let's have this come back to, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, we have that luxury.
Back to arses on C's.
Right.
And Weller, I'm not just saying this because I sort of work for Weller, but I am incredibly proud that Weller has pivoted and, gone down that route of shifting what it is they're doing with competition. And some really cool looks are winning and some really amazing colors are winning. But to one degree or other, I think there's a kind of a movement away from competition being won by Adobe.
Right.
As opposed to competition being won by a tint brush. for example.
Yeah, yeah. So you were afraid to get started. Did that fear go away?
I have to be very transparent with everybody listening. Because of COVID, I wasn't allowed by Weller, by the company that I work for, I wasn't allowed to do hair. So the period where you would have been doing a shoot, the period where you would have been doing, a collection or whatever it is that you're entering into, NAHA, I was on lockdown. I wasn't allowed to get with a photographer and models and do what you normally do for an entry. I tapped into the stuff that I'd done in the past, and I kind of narrowed it down to 3 black girls, and I'd done those 3 girls over 7 years. The oldest photograph was 7 years old. The newest photograph, I think, was 3 years old. They were done in 3 different cities. 2 of them I'd actually done on stage. I'd done in front of an audience. But the common denominator was they were all curly. They were all haircuts, not hairstyles. And again, I would invite your listeners to really think about what I've just said. They were haircuts. They weren't hair styles. There's a big difference there. And the common denominator as well was Nick Berardi did all 3 photographs. So what he was able to do, Ryan, he was able to make the background look similar with all 3 looks, able to make the skin tones look, so they actually looked like they were from the same shoot, when in actual fact, they were 3 different cities, 3 different occasions. None were shot with competition in mind. He kind of made them similar. But people listening to your podcast, Ryan, they can go to @HairMoody on Instagram. And what I did, each one of the 3, I put them up individually, photographs up, and then I did a post that was all 3 together.
So you can share those ahead of the NAHA competition, right? There's no rules that say you can't share those prior?
The rule is you can't share other than this year. Because of COVID,
gotcha.
What NAHA said is we're not expecting you to go and do a shoot.
Right.
So use something from the past. And I was like, well, this has already been on Instagram. This has been on Facebook. This, thousands of people have seen this stuff because I did it years ago. And they said, yeah, you're allowed to do that this year. So NAHA has been amazing. They have been so supportive and so fantastic in the sense that they've allowed people to enter with stuff that's not exclusive to the actual competition, which I think is wonderful in COVID times. Yeah.
Gotcha. One question I had for you, I know we're running out of time here, but you had said that it's cut versus style. And although I can grasp what you mean by that, isn't styling also an important part of the haircut itself? How do you differentiate the 2?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good question. I think the background that I've come from is Sassoon. And I think a great formula that is in my blood is, if you've got X amount of time to do someone's hair, try, if you can, to sort of have 75, 80% of that allocated time cutting the hair. And again, I'm just making up these figures that vary with the individuals, but 20, 25% styling the hair. I think the opposite to that is, that customer where for whatever reason, we spend 20% of our time cutting the hair and 80% of the time styling the hair, electrically manipulating. And the one thing that was kind of drilled into me from, the very, very outset is the measurement of what you do is not how they leave the salon. The measurement of what you do is what does she look like when she gets out of the shower?
And does it herself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if they can't replicate the look that they left the salon with, they're not going to be a happy customer.
Exactly. And I think the trick to that is obviously, it's not just connecting from a suitability standpoint. What does she do for a living? It's not just a matter of connecting with a suitability-wise, how wide is her face or how big is her nose, and it's not just connecting with her with what's her wishes. what length does she want her hair? And it's also connecting and speaking to her hair and designing a haircut that speaks to her hair type, her ethnicity, the density of her hair, the color that's in her hair. Really, speaking to the health of her hair. Not everybody has great hair, but formulating a length, a shape, a haircut, a technique that comes together with all of those so that when she gets out of the shower, she's still got her hair cut rather than a hair style.
Right. Which would go out the window, especially if it's raining and they leave the salon and boom, wet hair, done, your work is erased.
Exactly. Now, having said that, there are some women, certain parts of the country that want to wake up every morning and they don't have anything to do. They want to spend 3 hours in front of a mirror doing their hair. I
had a client, she said she would wake up at 4:00 in the morning, style her hair for 2.5 hours before the kids woke up.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right.
Go at it.
You have fun with yourself. That's just not how I'd really want to spend my mornings, but man, I'd probably shave my head. One last thing I really wanted to touch on before we go here. Okay. So you talk about how the actual scissor itself isn't nearly as important as the hand position because the scissors are dumb hand, but oh my gosh, there is so much pleasure in using a nice pair of shears and just watching that, pulling your fingers together and watching the hair hit the floor, and that's that nice blade on the hair. You have this shear design with Mitsutani. I want to talk about that real quickly. Is this the perfect shear? Do I need a pair?
I think you're asking the wrong person.
Well, I think I'm asking the right person. You're not going to put your name on something that you don't believe in.
I've worked with about 5 different Japanese manufacturers over the years and developing scissors for Vidal Sassoon. And shortly after I joined Weller, I'm approached by Mitsutani, which is again a Japanese scissor company. And, they said to me, we've got these scissors and could you give us your feedback? So, they sent me the scissors and I tried them and I said, this and that. And, I don't like this, but I like that and whatever. This process went on for about a year of several different pairs of scissors back and forth. And then finally they turned around to me and they said, would you like to work with us and design a Stephen Moody / Cutcraft pair of scissors? And I said, sure, but I work for Weller. I can't work for you. And they said, no, that's not the intention. So I went to Weller and I said, do you mind if I do this? And they want to put my name on there for marketing purposes. So long story short, Ryan, it took almost 2 years and 25 prototypes back and forth between Japan. And I think we've ended up with a good friend of mine, Josh DeMarco, who is in Philadelphia. He has worked with these scissors and he coined a phrase. He said, 1 pair for all hair. So I just think they're just an amazing pair of scissors for cutting just about any hair. I'm a big fan, Ryan, I got to be dead honest with you. I'm a big fan of 1 pair of scissors and 20 combs. I cut hair with my comb. I don't cut hair with my scissors. And a lot of hairdressers have got 20 pairs of scissors and 1 comb. That's about that big.
Whatever's clean.
Whatever's clean.
Yeah.
So these scissors, they really cut hair for the craft. They're incredibly ergonomically balanced. I've never had a pair yet that I've had to send back because they're defective. And again, I've worked with many manufacturers that there's one downfall to these scissors, and I'm going to be dead transparent with you. It's not the price. The downfall is I'm absolutely positive there's a little man sitting on a dirt floor in Japan, cross-legged, making 6 pairs of these every day. They're not mass-produced. It's a glass half full, and it's a glass half empty in the sense that they're amazing. The quality, the finish is all handmade, but they just don't make many. And I tried so hard to get, 50 for the studio in Moscow, 100 for the Weller studio in Paris and whatever and the like. No. We can't do that.
Well, it sounds like it's like the Lamborghini of shears. You know, they only make a certain amount of those every year.
Ryan, I'm going to give everybody listening the inside track on scissor manufacturers. And I only know this because I've worked with many, many, many. What happens with scissor manufacturers, they hit on something and they are all handmade. They're made in Japan from beginning to end, and it's low production. And bit by bit, sales ramp up. And what they do, they start to source the steel from China. Mm-hmm. They outsource the polishing and the finishing to Taiwan. And instead of making 1,000 a year, they're now making 20,000 a year. Mm-hmm. And the quality does that. Mitsutanis are a pain in the arse because they just don't make many. Mm-hmm. That's the negative. The positive is once you get a pair, you're going to love them and they'll last. You know, they're high quality and they're not expensive, like 700 or something, 750.
Okay. Yeah, that's very reasonable. Yeah. So if I was listening to this and I wanted to get a pair of your custom shears, how would I go about doing that?
At Hair DeMarco, DeMarco. At Hair DeMarco is the Instagram for Josh DeMarco. He has the US distributor program.
Awesome.
If you're listening in Canada, I'm sure if you Google Mitsutani Canada, there'll be a different one. Mm-hmm. And again, for full transparency, these are not my scissors. They belong to Mitsutani. Mm-hmm. Mitsutani sells them. They warrant them. I just simply designed them.
Right. You worked for 2 years to make sure that they fit your needs, which is what I love, as the quote is, one pair for all hair.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Yeah. And that's just such a great selling point too, because you think you need scissors for this, and the other. You need to have 7 or 8 or 15 pairs of scissors to be a real true hair cutter, right? A lot of people think that, but not if you have one pair that you can just kind of do everything with, based on your talent and your experience and the amount of combs you have.
Ryan, my advice would be to get 1, 2 pairs of scissors mm-hmm. that you're really happy with and comfortable with. You know, spend $200 mm-hmm. on combs and you're done. Mm-hmm. And all the other money that you would have spent on additional scissors, the cut craft class. Learn how to cut hair as opposed to, you know, just buying scissor after scissor after scissor. I've been cutting hair 40 odd years and I'm still learning.
That's amazing.
I am still learning things that are new and different. And that is an ongoing journey. And, you know, that will be my advice is save your money and invest the money in you rather than investing the money in a leather holster with 20 pairs of scissors.
And where can somebody find a great cut craft class? Go to Wella Ed?
Yeah.
Okay.
www.wellaed.com. All the virtual education is at the moment. There isn't really any studio face-to-face education listed for obvious reasons. But in 2021, that's going to change. The classes that I teach are 4 days. They're in Toronto, New York, and Calabasas in this part of the neck of the woods. But I also, my colleagues as well within Wella, we go into salons and, you know, we do education inside of salons as well. And we don't just do education with Wella customers. I've done education recently for people who carry a Veda, for other manufacturers. We're really happy to share our message, whether it's, you know, sharing the color message or it's sharing the cutting message with customers and non-customers alike. Listening to this podcast, if you are a customer of Wella, we love you. But if you're not a customer of Wella, we still love you.
It's a good message for our industry, just in general. Thank you so much for being here today. You're such an icon in our industry and you inspire millions of people worldwide and you inspire me daily. So thank you again for being here.
Back at you, Ryan. Take care, everybody, and stay well.
If people want to say hi to you, the best way to go is to your Instagram.
At Moody.
I love hearing from you. And by the way, have you subscribed to the podcast yet? Oh my gosh, if you haven't, please do so right now because there's so much cool stuff ahead. make sure you hit that subscribe button because it would be much cooler if you did. Plus, I don't want you to miss any of the new episodes I'm dropping weekly. Last thing, if you haven't checked out ryanweeden.com yet, there are some great freebies on there that I want to give you. So go ahead and check it out, ryanweeden.com. Thank you so much for listening. You are awesome.